Welcome back to your weekly dose of encouragement on the Unashamedly You podcast. I wanted to remind you if there is a topic you would like addressed or someone that you know you want to hear their story shared, go to unashamedlyu.com and select to send us a message. Or you can send us a message through social media. We are on Facebook and Instagram with Unashamedly You. We love tackling those topics and featuring the guests that you all refer to us. And if you are loving what you hear on the Unashamedly You podcast, we would be delighted if you would leave us a review over on Apple or Spotify and tell your friends. We love when someone lets us know they are listening because a friend referred them to our podcast. Hello, and welcome to the Unashamedly You podcast, a space to enlighten, encourage, and empower you to go out and unashamedly be who God is calling you to be. I am your host, Jamie Herndon. I pray you hear less of me and more of Him as you listen to today's episode. Let's grow together. She is no stranger to the Unashamedly You podcast. She's actually been on episodes 131, 164, also a fun episode with the Her Summit, and that is episodes 166 and 167. We did a part 1 and part 2, an in-person live event. It was so much fun. If you have not yet, make sure to go back and listen to those episodes once you are done with this one. She is a personal friend, more like a cousin, really. I cannot imagine my life without her and her mom in it. My mom and her mom are best friends, but they were more like sisters, so they raised us all like we're pretty much family. We have a lot of amazing memories together, but she has grown into an inspiring woman of God that I look up to and am learning from. She is now my doctor. When doctors don't know what is really going on, she'll dig until we find out what is going on. Dr. Lyndi Mullinax, welcome back to the Unashamedly You podcast. We're going to get started, but before we do, introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about you and some things that you love.
Well, thank you for having me, Jamie. I'm so happy to be on. I love the Unashamedly You podcast. Like you said, we were raised like family. Both of us are from FPC NLR. We were blessed to, be raised under the leadership of Bishop Holmes, who I think I said this at the Her Summit. We never felt like we were inferior to any of the boys we grew up with. We knew that whatever our dreams were, Bishop Holmes preached to us to pursue them. He thinks that we should preach. He thinks that we should teach. He thinks that we should own businesses. Whatever the Lord has called us to do, he thinks we should passionately pursue it, just like men do. Um, so, born and raised here in Central Arkansas. We've talked about it in the past. I love to read. I love to travel. Um, I'm passionate about women's health, and that seems to be where the Lord has led me um, and called me at this time. And so I own a clinic here in the Central Arkansas area called Her Whole Health. We do women's hormone replacement therapy, we do functional medicine, and we do just IV wellness, stuff like that. We've been open a little over a year now. The Lord has exceeded my expectations, and thanks to Him, we are keeping the lights on, paying the bills, and hopefully making a difference.
You definitely are making a difference. That is for sure. And we usually have you on here because we start talking about health things and things that are important. But today we're going to change it up a little bit. And most know you as Her Whole Health. But we are going to talk about the Dr. Mullinax before Her Whole Health and how everything got started. So you were first a practitioner on the field. So just tell us a little bit about what you used to do and then when you first felt God calling you to step out and to do something different.
Sure. Well, it all goes back, I guess, to the beginning of my nursing career. I went to nursing school to be a pediatric nurse and eventually become a pediatric nurse practitioner. My Mimi, when she passed away, we found a bunch of stuff she had kept. And for our high school graduation from Calvary Academy, we had to write something about where we saw ourselves in 10 years or something. And I wrote that I was going to be a pediatric nurse and become a pediatric nurse practitioner because I had open heart surgery at 5 years old. And that's a whole other story we won't get into. So I was accepted into the nursing program that I wanted to go to. And my first specialty rotation was OB. And the teacher, the first day that we met her, it was like the week before clinical, they had us just meet with our teachers before we actually started clinical. And her name was Kathleen. I can still see her. Um, she was a younger instructor, and she had us go around the table and say, what we were planning to do when we became nurses. And I was like, I'm going to be a pediatric nurse, and I'm going to work in CVICU, blah 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 blah. Well, she kept me after class. She's like, Lindy, I really want to talk to you. And we haven't even started. What am I in trouble for? um, and she's like, you're not in trouble. She said, I noticed that and this is a secular school, mind you. It's UAMS, so there's not a lot of spiritual things happening at UAMS as far as that they're vocal about. Um, and she said, when I asked you what you plan to do and you said pediatric, she said, I saw myself in you. She was like, you're not going to be a pediatric nurse. You're going to be an OB nurse. And I was like, what? What in the world? She's like, I'm telling you, I see myself in you. And I said the same thing. I was going to be a peds nurse too, but I went to labor and delivery. So, in fact, next week I'm going to send you to labor and delivery and then we're going to talk afterwards. So I went to labor and delivery and something happened to me and I never cared about pediatrics again other than I want children to be healthy. I fell in love with it and sure enough, that was my dream. And after I graduated nursing school, I was able to get a job at the only high risk labor and delivery unit on in the state. There's lots of labor and delivery units, but only one tertiary is what we call it, super high risk. So I did that straight out of school. Um, then I'd been a nurse about 2 years, and I decided to go back, to become a nurse practitioner, started out in the women's health track, and they closed the program in my second semester, and I thought, "What in the world am I gonna do?" And they said, "You can either switch to peds or families." The good thing about family is that you can still do women's health with a family nurse practitioner degree, and so I was like, "Okay." So I did that, graduated, and there was no jobs available, as a women's health nurse practitioner, so I worked a little longer on labor and delivery, and then my family doctor, hired me as to work in his primary care clinic, which was not really what I wanted to do, but I needed the experience. I'd never really taken care of men or kids really for that matter, so I did get that under my belt, and then I had no idea what the Lord had in store for me down the road. I worked for him for about 3 years and then really felt the Lord calling me back to obstetrics. And so I went back to work at UAMS. There was still nothing available in the clinic as a nurse practitioner, so I actually took a or an RN job again, in high risk obstetrics, and then ended up kind of quickly promoting in more of a management and education route. Then the College of Nursing hired me to teach for them full time. And then the dream job, the job that I went to school for when I decided to go back to become a nurse practitioner, finally, about 6 years after I had finished my degree, finally came open at the Women's Health Clinic doing high risk obstetrics with some low risk gynecology. And I thought, man, I have arrived. This is the job that I went to school with. This is what I'm going to do forever and ever. Um, High risk obstetrics was my passion. But as I got in this role, Roe versus Wade was overturned in DC with the Supreme Court, and Arkansas developed some of the strictest abortion laws that's in the state, which is a good thing. I've always been pro life, but some of the people that I was working around were really upset about this change, and it was constantly trying to put it back. We need to put it back on the ballot so that since it's in the state hands, Arkansas should still be able to do abortions. Anyway, it wasn't setting well with me. And they respected me. They'd worked with me for years between the hospital and the clinic and the College of Nursing. So they knew how I felt. But I was still getting these emails, which shouldn't have even been going around, about how sign this petition to have abortion back. And then anytime there was something remotely wrong with the patient, I did have to have a conversation. Um, these are your options. And I would have patients ask, where can I go have an and it didn't sit well with me spiritually. But then I was also seeing a lot of sick people, like people even when they were not pregnant or before they got pregnant, had all of these chronic illnesses going on. And I was in my low risk gynecology taking care of these 13-year-old girls who were putting on birth control for irregular cycles or for whatever reason. And I was like, something is happening. And some nationwide statistics came out, and Arkansas was like number 47 in the country for the unhealthiest women, and our maternal mortality rate, which is the number of women who end up dying with complications related to childbirth, was at the 51st percentile, which is like third world country status. I was like, what is happening in this state? And so it really started bothering me, and I kind of started going down a rabbit hole of what we were doing wrong and what we could do to prevent this. And there was no prevention really being discussed. We were trying to fix the matter, but we were trying to fix the matter once it was an issue instead of trying to prevent it. And so I started kind of changing some things with my own health, and it really kind of started burdening me. And I got really miserable. Like my friends were picking up on it. And I remember finally my dad set me down one night and he was like, Lindy, what is wrong with you? Like, I don't know, I'm just not happy. And I still kind of tear up thinking about it because everything, my life was going as it was supposed to go. Um, but I think when God puts a burden on you, and there's no way to describe when something changes and you know that you have to do it. And you contacted me. You're like, let's go to lunch and just talk. And I got to telling you kind of how I was feeling. And I said, there's a way to prevent this kind of stuff. And if people would get more of a functional medicine or pay more attention to their hormones. And she said, you're right. Why are you not doing this? I thought, because I'm me and I can't do this. I never ever had any intention or desire to be a business owner. um, I really think, like, well, even when I went to nursing school, I just had plans to like work as an RN for 5 years, and then I would become Cinderella and have a family, and not even have to worry about any of this other stuff. But it's not how it went. And so, when you said that, it's like something clicked with me, and I was like, maybe this is what I'm supposed to do. So I started praying about it, and doors started opening. I talked to Pastor about it, and he said, "Lindy, I think you're in the Holy Ghost. I think you need to pursue this." And so I did something that was totally out of my comfort zone. I'm not the type to make a rash decision and quit a job that was 6 figures but I did it. And doors started opening and we opened Her Whole Health on March the 10th of 2025 and here we are.
I'll never forget having that conversation with you. And you could just tell you're like, I'm supposed to be happy. This is where I'm supposed to be. And I think we all at some point get to that place. I know in my previous company, I got to the very top. And the day that I got to the top and I started opening, checks and everybody was supposed to be excited. And this is like your pay grade that you're going to be getting from doing this. I was, it was one of the most miserable moments of my life. Like, I will never forget that, and it's because God was making me uncomfortable where I was and upsetting the things that I thought and all my plans, and He helps me to get there, there's no doubt, but it's like once I got to that point, into that place, it's like, "Okay, what now? Like, what am I supposed to be doing? This isn't it, like, there's more. There's something that God's calling me to that's different," and you were feeling that same way, and I'm like, "Lindy, you're supposed to be doing Her Whole Health." Which we didn't know was a Her Whole Health at the time. So we were saying, you're supposed to be doing women's health in a way that is godly and in a way that you can help these people. The burden that you have and what you really wanted to do was to help women.
Absolutely.
You didn't realize at the time of whenever you got to where your dream job and where you were gonna be going, that you weren't gonna be helping women in that way that you thought you were.
Absolutely. And what's kind of weird is that, um, I was devastated when that women's health track closed, but I needed that family nurse practitioner because it's so much more broad. It was able to open the door to functional medicine. But by the time I went to work in the women's health clinic, they were preferring family nurse practitioners because our women had gotten so sick that we knew better how to manage diabetes, the heart issues. We had more education on that. And so the Lord knew what He was doing the whole time when that dream job didn't work out as soon as I thought it should. And then when that family nurse practitioner route opened instead of the women's health. God is he's a great author, but he's mysterious in his ways, but he's methodical in what he does.
He is. And, I was just talking to someone about this the other day, and I was saying, and I have to give credit to Brother Mike Holmes. He is a man that goes to our church, and he often says this. And now my husband and I, we both have stolen it, and it's unconscious preparation. God unconsciously
Absolutely.
prepares you for the things that He has for you. But we don't even know what He has for us yet. We haven't even been able to get there. We
Absolutely.
don't even know those things yet. And so we don't realize what He's preparing us for. But when God is preparing you for something and things aren't going the way that you think they should, and you're not feeling exactly the way that they should, He's preparing you for something that you don't even know.
Right. And it will blow your mind every time.
Every time, whenever we get there and He opens the door, you're like, you can confidently walk through that door because you know that He's prepared you to be able to do that. I know that you face some fears stepping out. Like you said, you closed off a 6-figure income and really quickly, like you got out of there and you went into this. So when you faced some fears, what did you face? And then how did you push past it to keep going?
So um I had been putting some money back. I had a really nice retirement, had been putting money back, extra money back to buy a house because I was still living with my mom and dad because I'm an only child and I'm their baby. And I kind of do my own thing, but I was still in their house because it was easier that way. But had put back money because I did want to buy a house in Park Hill, but none of the houses I look at were really working out. Um, and so I knew there was some cushion room, but I thought, okay, there's X amount that's going to be my cushion, but like, are people going to come? Um, God, like, is this people really even interested in this? I talked to my lawyer and she was like, stay away from insurance because you want to be able to make it financially. And so I knew I wasn't going to accept insurance. And I thought, what in the world? Like, just the great unknown of not even knowing if there would be a income to pay for these things. Like, am I gonna have to use this money to even make my rent? And then there's a lot of overhead that comes with it, just the financial aspect itself. And also just like I said, I'm not the type person to take that big of a step. So there was a fear of even but getting past the mental part of quitting my job for a company that I had worked. There was 3 years that I didn't work at UAMS from 2009 during nursing school because I'd gone to work for them during nursing school as a tech until 2025. So, like, I was well vested. I knew people there. I knew my job was dependable. Um, and I thought, I'm going into something that there's no retirement, there's no health benefits, there's what am I doing? And so it was actually, and I had to remember my dad would always say, Lindy, he says this to me about lots of things. Faith without works is dead. Faith without works is dead. And so I had to put the works behind that faith. That, God had never, ever let me down in the past. And I just had to depend on the fact that if he had never let me down before, that he wasn't going to let me down again.
A lot of times we say we have faith, like it's easy to speak certain things. It's like, oh, I've got
Mhm.
faith in God. But when the faith is tested, that's when you really get to know if you have faith in God.
Okay.
Whenever you actually, yes, when you actually have to put some works behind it, when you actually have to do something, whenever you can't see the end result, you didn't know you were going to get a customer. You're like, okay, if my mom comes and my cousins come and and start adding up these people, you're like, okay. But that is a huge fear to face is you walked away from something that was comfortable into something that was uncomfortable. But at the same time, you were walking into something God was calling you to. And he's never going to
Yes,
call you to something that he's just going to drop you.
absolutely.
So what did taking that first step of faith actually look like for you?
It looked like me composing an email and putting in my 4 weeks notice, to my dream job, and a job that there was probably gonna be some room for advancement, and like I said, the OB side of me that I still love and miss to this day, they they fought for me to get that position. They really wanted me there, and, so I knew I was turning a lot of things down, and so it was once I could actually send that email and be done, that was probably the hardest thing that I did. As trivial as that sounds, it was hard.
Oh, I'm sure because that's like the final step. Like afterwards, you can't
Mhm.
really take the email back.
Yep,
Never
yep.
mind. Just kidding. So once you sent the email off, did you feel ready whenever you started Her Health, or did you move forward in some uncertainty?
I moved forward in a lot of uncertainty. I had no idea what I was doing. I had never owned a business. Um, I knew nothing about running a business. I sure didn't know about opening a health clinic, and so I had, like, all these people. I'm like, "Well, what do you think I should, um if you were gonna be doing this, because I really didn't know anybody else other than my former boss, Dr. Cobb, who had recently retired, and he had opened his business in the 1970s, and so, yeah, I kinda picked their brain a little bit, and then other people who owned businesses that really weren't healthcare related, um, and went to a nurse practitioner conference that just so happened to have some vendors there who were, like, specifically for nurse practitioner clinics, so the Lord just kinda started opening doors. But I'm gonna tell you, I still sometimes feel like I have no idea what I'm doing. It's tax season, and I am feeling all those feelings again. I have no idea what I'm doing with this.
I often say that God will never call you to something that you're good at and that you feel confident in. He will always call you to something. Whenever it's Him calling you to it, it's always, every single time, you're going to need His help. You're going to need His guidance. You're going to have to move forward with Him. And I think that's one thing that's really scary is we don't know the how. We don't know how it's going to work out. We don't
Absolutely.
know exactly how to do all the things that we're going to have to do. I mean, owning a business versus working for someone is two totally different things.
Yes, it is.
Owning a business sounds really fun. And then you start thinking of all these things, like you said, tax season, and all these things that you never had to worry about.
Who knew about a franchise tax? Like, what in the world is that? But there's a quarterly franchise tax in the state of Arkansas, even if you're not a franchise that you
I
pay.
was gonna say without the franchise. Just
I found though that the calling of God requires complete and total dependence on God. I think that's one way you know that it's a calling is that it requires complete and total dependence on Him.
how did you balance trusting God and still making those practical plans? So you have to dig in. You've got to find some things. Faith without works is dead. You got to put some of that work
Mhm.
in, but then also trusting God whenever, hey, I know a little bit of this, but I know nothing else on this part.
Prayer, fasting, and research. Daily prayer. I think that my prayer life definitely went up a level once I decided to do this. Um, And sometimes I think that there was no balance in it. A lot of times I think it was more fear than anything else, but I mean, I knew there was no income coming in for a little while. And I did have some bills, and so I knew it had to work. Like, it had to work. I had no other option than it work. And so I just dug my heels in and was constantly researching things that I needed to know to make it happen. And I just literally jumped off the cliff and went against my personality and made it happen.
Matt often says, I have no plan B. Like, God, this is
Exactly.
the only plan. I got a plan A and that's it. And so you're going to have to make plan A work. There's no plan B here.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think that a lot of times people think someone that does something like opens a business or, quits a job. I hate to keep referring to Matt and personal references, but whenever Matt walked away from his income a year ago, his W-2 is what he called it. So he walked away from that and to do his business full time. Anytime someone walks away to do a business full time, I think that people from the outside looking in, they think, oh, they had it all together. They knew what they were doing. That's why they were able to do that. And I really wanted to have this conversation with you to encourage someone else that is feeling a calling to do something more, that you don't always have it all figured out. That's the whole point of it. The whole point of God asking something of you and calling something of you is that you have to trust Him.
Absolutely. Faith is a substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. You know, if we had all the answers and we knew how it was going to turn out and we knew exactly how to do it, it wouldn't be faith.
What challenges tested that faith the most in those early stages? And really, you're still pretty new in the business, and then maybe some faith that you've had to have, some challenges that have come along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, was trying to find a building that had everything that we need that I could afford. And, Arkansas real estate's a lot cheaper than what most places is, but it was hard to find something that where we could still run labs that had its own bathroom, that had a sink in it, that I could afford to pay the rent. Especially when I wasn't sure what my patient load was gonna look like. Um, so that was huge. And then even today, we don't accept insurance. We're cash card only. And there are seasons where we're just constantly don't even have a minute to catch our breath. And then there's other times when I'm getting on the floor and reminding the Lord, you called me to do this. You cannot let me fail, Lord. I've done what I'm supposed to do. Um, I'm gonna need to make X amount to be able to make the rent and but it's crazy the times that I've been in situations like that over the last year. And um, there's a particular lady in our church who is really, I don't know why I'm so emotional today, but she really believes in what I'm doing, and I'll receive a check in the mail randomly, maybe when things look like it's going to be a little tight, and I'll have it. And this is somebody who is not a super wealthy person. It'll be like a $200 that I've needed, and there it is. The Lord always comes through and always manages to blow my mind. With the Her Summit, when I felt like we needed to do that for free, random checks that I got in the mail, and God provided.
Can you share a moment where you clearly saw God provide and He made a way when there seemed to be no way?
Basically, what I said with the with a lady in the check, it had been kind of right after the holidays, things just kind of, everybody's spent out from Christmas and we had had some really slow weeks. And I remember I looked at Claire and I was like, I don't know what we're going to do. I don't. And I was like, I hate to tell you this because your paycheck is in my, like, I'm responsible for your paycheck and I don't know what we're going to do. And I remember we anointed the telephone that day. And the next week, we weren't hardly able to get to all the patients that called us. I think we saw 18 patients in one day during that. And that's huge. Like, that's more than what my patient load was at the other clinic. And also received a check from the little lady in our church that's always seems to come through when we need it. But I'll never forget, she anointed that phone, and she's what, 19 years old, and she just knew what she knew to do was to pray. And we prayed over that telephone, and the week just blew up, and we had more than enough to make it happen.
I have a feeling that some people are going to be anointing some phones. That is so powerful. Wow.
We've done it more than once. We've
I'm
done it more than
trying.
once. We have anointed our telephone. And Claire started it. She's like, well, I don't know what else to do, Lyndi. I just decided maybe we should anoint the telephone. I said, maybe we should. And we did. And it's happened more than once. And anytime it does, we have seen just an influx. And
Ask and you shall receive. Seek and you're
that's
going to
right.
find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. There is nothing that God cannot do whenever we ask, seek, and knock.
That's right.
How has this journey changed your understanding of purpose? Because you felt your purpose and your calling all those years. You worked really hard. You have a great education that took time, it took money, it took devotion to get. But then now you've got a whole new purpose.
I think that it's shown me that, sometimes the call of God looks a little different than what you thought it was going to look like. It's just as beautiful. It may be completely left field of what you thought it was going to be, but if you can trust the plan and trust the process, um, that it's always beautiful and it's usually always mind blowing as well.
What would you say to someone who is feeling called to step out? They want to do something new, they're feeling called to do something, but they're afraid to begin because it is scary.
I would say pray and do a specific fast that's specifically for what you're feeling. The Lord will come through and show you what you're supposed to do where you will have no question. Also, talk to your man of God in your life and any other person who you have a lot of confidence in. I had a lot of talks with my parents. I talked with you. My cousin Jeremiah is a business owner. He and Sarah, I talked to them about it just to get their feelings on what they thought. You just have your corner of people who who you trust and believe in, and that is going to shoot it straight to you, and that who will also be praying about it with you. I think I talked to Andrea Seifert. She's always been like my other mom. I think I'd talk to her about it, see what kind of get a feeling on her from it. And then of course pastor, but a specific fast, lots of prayer, talking to those who are in authority and that you have a lot of confidence in for sure. Um, make sure that I always had a good Bible study that I was doing on my own as well, because the Lord will, there's answers in his word that he'll give you. And if it all still seems to be like there's no anything blocking it, go for it. Make sure that you've got some financial cushioning, a little bit at least, and go for it. If everything is pointing in that direction, and it's scary, but it's worth it.
It is. Every single time that God is calling you to something and you just go after it, blind faith, and you have no clue how it's going to work out or what's going to happen, He honors that. God
Yes.
honors whenever we trust Him, and He cannot fail. It's in His
No,
word.
he cannot.
And so when we know, like, God, you're not going to fail me, you're going to be there every single step of the way. And I've had the question come to me multiple times, and during coaching other people and businesses, and people are going to step out and they're like, but what if I fail? And I'm like, but what if you do? What are the consequences of failing? We put so much emphasis on failing that we forget to put an emphasis on if it works out. We forget about that.
Absolutely.
Like, we're not worried about if it works out. If it works out, oh, praise God. But thank the Lord that it worked out. But we put so much emphasis on the failing part of it, and we forget who is calling us to it. We forget who is asking us to do it, who's put this desire and this purpose and this calling on our lives. We forget all about that because we get so focused on what if it doesn't work out? What if it fails? And I've told people before, write it down.
Absolutely.
Write down what all's going to happen to you if it fails. I mean, with you would have just turned around and went back to a job. You could have gotten one, and you know that.
Absolutely.
To someone else, I mean, if things fail, oh, well. Like, people fail at things all the time, but you have
I have a really abnormal fear of failure and rejection, like those two things. Like it's not healthy, my fear of that. And my close friends know this. Sarah really knows this. There's been multiple times that she said, Lyndi, and whether it be about this business or about relationships or about something else in my life, she said, what is the worst thing that will happen if you fail? She's like, I'm going to need you to say it out loud. What is the worst case scenario? Because you're driving yourself crazy about it. Just tell me. And I'll say what that is. She's like, so it can't get any worse than that. So just do it. This is a conversation we have on at least a weekly basis because I'm constantly afraid of failing at something. So I get that.
and you just you have to say it out loud, and then once you realize this is the very worst thing that can happen, is it worth not trying? Is it worth not going after? Is it worth being miserable not being in the will of God? Because when he calls you to something and puts something on your heart, in my opinion, it's not worth it. I hate that feeling of not doing all I can do for God. I do not want
Absolutely.
to live my life in fear whenever I could have lived it in increase, when I could have lived it in the perfect plan and the will of God and done more for him than what I would have ever been able to do on my own.
Right.
Everything that you have said has been so good. I really wanted to have this conversation with you so that people could know kind of how her whole health got started, some of the things that you went through in the beginning, and some of the things that you went through recently. But just to know that, hey, if God calls you to it, do everything you can to run after it, to go after it. That's something you're doing. It's so inspiring and encouraging. Thank you for being on the podcast again today. What is one last thing that you would want to leave with all of us in the Unashamedly You community today?
God, and I've heard many people say this, God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. And if you are walking in your calling, again, like you said, God can't fail. It's not in his nature. He cannot lie. He's not a man that he could lie. He's going to come through for you. And he's going to make sure that as long as you're working and doing your part, that you're going to have the tools to be able to make it when you can surrender 100% to him, which is a lot easier said than done.
A whole lot easier said than done, but it's something that can be done and that we are working to do. And if you
Man,
pray, so much more can be done in the spirit than can be done in the natural. And so whenever you pray and you get God behind you, you can do it. Thank you so much for being on the podcast again. And I look forward to working with you and seeing you. We have some amazing things that are coming on the Unashamedly You podcast with Her Whole Health as well. We also have the Her Summit things that have been going on. Some people have asked us to come and to do that. So if you guys are ever interested in having something like that live at your church or in your space, make sure to contact us. Thank you so much, Dr. Lyndi Mullinax, for being on the podcast. We love you.
thank you.
If you are interested in learning more about the Her Summit and how we can come and see and speak to your group live, send us a message via email or social media, and we will send over that info. And if you would like more information on Dr. Lyndi Mullinax and Her Whole Health, all that she has to offer, send us a message and we will get you connected with her. Also, you can go to the show notes and I'll leave all of her contact information there. Thank you for listening to another episode on the Unashamedly You podcast. We are so grateful to have you listen in week after week. Go be unashamedly you.